All right, so according to my laptop time, we've hit the official start time for the meeting. Welcome, everyone. I'm see that a lot of people are still joining, so we'll give it a couple of minutes. Please add your name to the meeting notes. Has somebody let me put that in the chat? Hey, Lynn. Hi, everyone. Just giving it a few minutes as people join. Please add your name to the meeting notes. We'll get started in a few minutes. Thank you.
We're having a thunderstorm here. I hope we don't lose power.
I hope so too. I also hope, though, that it's cooling it off down there in Washington, D.C.
Well, yeah, it's temperature's dropping with the storm, but the humidity's getting even worse. Maybe you can hear the thunder. It's just rolling through town.
All right. Well, it appears that the join rate has slowed. So welcome to the RPC community call. It's our second one, and we are continuing with the agenda items from the last meeting. Please note that the recording will be shared on YouTube afterwards. Please add your name to the agenda notes under participants. So before we get started, does anybody have anything they want to add to the agenda? Any questions? Oh, all right. So last meeting, we were discussing the RPC strategic transformations. These were topics at our retreat that we held in April. And to get back into it, the next topic here, or strategic transforms, involve transparency. So the state that we have at the RPC is that our workings are opaque to the community, that perhaps the community doesn't understand everything we do. So how we would like to transform it is that we are sufficiently transparent to the IETF community so they have a good understanding of what we're doing. So the projects to support that transform are these calls, and also a public roadmap. There's a link there. There is the start of a roadmap in GitHub. It's in the notes if y'all would like to take a look there. And also, we hope to have our roadmap link into the tools team roadmap so we can provide even more information about some of the tooling updates that are being worked on for the RPC. Any questions or comments? Any comments about this call? Paul?
Hi, greetings. I've just hit this twice in the last couple of months in one of my working groups about when you're talking about transparency. One of the things that everyone who doesn't know better wants to know is now that my document has completed IESG review, or even actually once, and you'll only be able to answer half of this. Once my document is going into IESG review, when do I get an RFC? And I can ask the ISG like for estimates or whatever, but there's definitely like I believe the majority of authors don't understand what is the, if you look at the average at the moment you go in and you make sure you're not part of a collection, I forget the name, uh, one of the gangs that will get delayed.
A
Here
cluster.
is the
Cluster.
cluster. Thank you. Yes, gang. Here is an estimate with, wide error bars. I think if y'all did something once a year, twice a year that says, here's how you can estimate. And again, and anything like if you're in a cluster, forget it. Like we can't give you estimates or whatever. If there's a list of things, um, I think that would go a long way towards people feeling better about their document getting launched into the RC process. Every time I've told the people in my working group out there, like, okay, great.
All right. So toward the end of the agenda, we'll be showing where one can find the information to help estimate when your document will arrive in Auth 48. And also, we have requirements for the new queue management system to provide better visibility to authors, an estimate of when their document might be available for final review, and definitely provide more information about how the document is progressing. So better labels than edit, RFC editor, Auth 48, provide more insight into, the document's actually waiting for an editor to be assigned to it, things like that. Anything else before moving on to the next transparency transform? So we currently have a long-lived mailing list. The RFC editor mailing list, once belonged to a person, then became a mailing list, and it's used for all RPC communications. It is currently private, and we want to create an open list so people can peruse the archives. After taking a look at this, the RFC editor mailing list, because it has been private, we feel that we should start with a new list. So there's new expectations, there's clean archives. However, there is a tools dependency here in order for us to say support a new mailing list with our current system, which is end of life. We would have to make a lot of updates that we are not willing to make. So a new mailing list will be rolling out with the new queue management system. And people will be able to, with the open list, they'll see our interactions with IANA. They'll see the Auth 48 interactions, which are also currently available through the Auth 48 archive. You'll see notifications from Data Tracker when documents enter the queue or have been updated, when an author submits a new version. So any questions or comments there? All right, and I have already touched on this transform where authors don't have a lot of visibility into their document status other than a few state labels, and we are working to improve that. And that's part of the new queue management software requirements. I've mentioned the community calls. So the community calls, we're hosting these so we can let you know what we're working on, and the people can get to know us a bit better. And the next thing though on transparency, and this is a big one, is well, the current SLA, the service level agreement, isn't fit for purpose. It was created in 2016 before the rollout of RFC XML version 3. Our workload has increased due to the XML format and having to check 3 output formats, managing tools issues occasionally with that this current SLA doesn't really handle the burstiness of the documents entering the queue. So the steps here, the project is to work with the community to define a new SLA. What needs to be measured? What should the targets be? And this will be started currently thinking of topics to get people thinking about this. Anybody have any comments at the moment on what they might like to see in an SLA? And again, conversations will continue to happen on the RFC interest list. All right, moving on. So the next set of strategic transforms is reflecting the changing author processes. So many authors use author in Markdown, and they would like support of that format when the document enters the queue. Oh, and we would like to support it. We have run experiments on a few docs to help us identify tools requirements and modify our processes. We are in the process of training the editors. We've completed basic training, and the next set of training will be on more complex formatting. Russ.
Thank you. I think this would be very helpful. I have to believe that Markdown will require less training than when you used NROF. So it can't be a horrendous leap. But please
Fair enough.
proceed.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Oh. Yeah, our current explorations with Markdown, yes, working within Markdown itself has been easy, but we do have a process and tools to work on. Dave.
Yeah, when you say Markdown, do you specifically mean Cramdown, or do you mean a more wider set of Markdown?
We are working with Cramdown RFC as it is the most common flavor of Markdown used by draft authors.
That's what I was assuming, but if that's the case, it's probably better to say Cramdown than to say Markdown, which could be interpreted differently by other folks.
Fair enough. And all right, Michael.
Hi. I'm actually quite the Markdown skeptic. I've used it with co-authors to author RFCs. And yeah, the easy things seem easy, but there's plenty of non-obvious syntax, including that it's space sensitive, and there's things that you just can't express in it that you can in XML to RFC. Some of the figure captioning doesn't work. Nested lists largely don't work. I understand it's kind of a good starter drug to get people writing stuff, but if you actually want control over the output, it's terrible.
So we are, what we have internally is we're working on what we call a Rosetta Stone, that we capture both how you do it in RFC XML and in crammed down RFC. And yes, there are some places that are TBD or question marks there.
Well, I guess also my question is, what's the goal here? Given the canonical format is XML, what does it mean to support authors during the RFC editor process in Markdown when ultimately they're going to have to review the XML?
So the big thing is to give the authors Markdown at the beginning of Auth 48. So they can take that back to their GitHub repos, for example. It allows them to view changes that we've made more easily with the documents that they have submitted to us. So the current process whereby an author has to provide either a text file or XML, when that happens, when the content's been converted to XML, then the diffs get really noisy. And we've had many authors come back and say, can we just see it in Markdown at the start of Auth 48? And then when we're good with the edits, then you can convert it to XML and we'll take a look at the output formats then. And we've done this a few times. We've run a few experiments where we have started Auth 48 with Markdown, and it has gone pretty well, and the authors have been really happy.
Okay, maybe it's just definitional, but that doesn't sound like Auth 48, but it is an additional author review step, I suppose.
Yes.
Auth 48 to me is you're looking at the final outputs and saying yes or no.
And they do that also. So with our process of starting Auth 48 with the document Markdown, we ask the authors to approve our the edits that we've made to the wording. And then once they say, yes, we're good with that, we convert it to XML and then have the authors approve the final versions. So Auth 48 does become a two approval process. Okay,
that's at least clear, even though I remain a skeptic of the input format. Thank you.
And you do not have to submit in Markdown. You can submit in XML. We are not moving away from that.
Don't get me wrong. I have co-authors who want to do Markdown, and I go along with them because it's not a fight worth having. But I was curious what it meant to support Markdown in the RFC editor process. So that is clear. Thank you. That I assume this will all get written down at some point when it's a plan of record.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Jane.
Mm-hmm. Paul?
So not to get too bogged down on this one topic, but one thing that you said earlier, Gene, that I think might confuse some people on the call is you said, we're using cram down. I think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, if I understood this from the meeting that we had a couple of IETFs ago, that what you meant was for the experiment that you did, you were using cram down. But in the future, if Markdown is going to be an input format, we might come up with something different, something that is easier to describe. One of the things, Michael said, which is completely true and such. So what you're doing now is not necessarily what's going to be used later. And again, my personal hope is that we're not using cram down, that we actually do use something that is easier to define and has more extensions for doing some of the things and so on.
Right. Long-term evolution is a markdown flavor that is supported by the tools team.
Yep. Great. Thanks.
Mhm. John?
Yeah, I want to join Michael in being skeptical. From what you described, if I understand it, and I may not, we're creating the expectation that document authors are going to at least be able to read RFC XML and read cram down or markdown and read text and read PDF and read HTML. That's a barrier to authoring. And I think unless you can figure out how to make that work beyond saying, well, you can always submit an XML, I think you are headed in a direction which will reduce the number of people who are able and willing to put in the energy to write internet drafts and work RFCs through the process. To repeat briefly what I tried saying on the list, I think we have made a problem for ourselves. If you look at the evolution between XML RFC v1 and v2, and even more important, the evolution between v2 and the current RFC XML, we've created a trap for ourselves by making that language immensely complicated. It's no longer generic markup, it's a mixture between generic markup and formatting markup and metadata and a variety of other things. As it moves closer to the RFC, to your processing, it gets worse, but that's okay if that's what you want. But I think rather than focusing especially primarily on some kind of markdown dialect as the input format, we'd be well served by reviewing RFC XML and thinking in terms of an authoring subset that is really generic markup and is of all the formatting details that make the current version cumbersome, tedious, hard to learn, and for whatever it's worth, a violation of design principles of HTML and XML for document formatting purposes. It's interesting, the argument you made for Markdown is an argument that it saves people worrying about all those formatting issues. But that's exactly where I think we may have gone astray with RFC XML. And I know that's controversial, and I won't belabor it anymore. I don't think you should lose sight of that alternate way of looking at the problem.
Thank you. But I do want to clarify that the authors have wanted to review Markdown in Auth 48. So this is actually an author request, and Markdown is optional. So the current formats that we accept are V2, V3, and text, although text is very rare at this point.
And you're getting some of that text out of authors who are still writing in MS Word, which I can't recommend, but I know what's going on.
Yeah.
If you are willing to and have resources to support a bunch of different author styles in a form which makes those authors happy, I'm good with that. I just worry a little bit about where those resources could otherwise be spent.
Thank you. Jay?
So I think the RPC and everyone here is in a difficult position because we have such a broad community that we have some very strong views on very different ends of the spectrum here. We have a group of people who are very strongly pushing Markdown in whatever flavor, and very against RFC XML because of various reasons. Then on another side of things, we have John, your view about the complexity of RFC XML and its the design, and yet many of the individual changes that people propose around RFC XML are related to formatting and positioning of text and these type of things. So the drive is very strongly to make it even more complex for people to, you know, finally position every last bit of a document. So we are we're sort of having a proxy conversation here about the nature of authoring and the nature of the consistency of the series and the intent of the series, whether the intent is simply to write documents that people can read and understand, or whether the intent is more to allow authors to write documents in the way that they think is the best way to explain something. And so I think perhaps we might need to have some of that higher level conversation in order to then set some of the rules about the development of these underlying technologies, because otherwise we're sort of just going to continue, I think, having a tension backwards and forwards when we're doing the individual changes rather than having anything guiding it.
Thank you. So the next transform, oh, John.
Since the queue was empty, I thought I would stop typing and respond a little bit to Jay. I think we're in complete agreement. But if we, about the fact that the complexity has come from authors wanting the complexity, wanting more control of our format. But if I can say something philosophical, if we're going to go significantly down that path, not suggesting this, but we might as well go back to NROF. Because exactly the thing which motivated XML to RFC D1 was both to deprive authors of the necessity of messing around with the formatting and to deprive them the opportunity for messing around with the formatting, because that ought to be an editorial problem in which most of our editorial and layout problem in which most of our authors are not nearly as expert as many of them think they are. So at some philosophical level, Jay and I are in complete agreement. It's just a question of where you go from there. And from my point of view, giving into all of these, I want to be able to finally twitch the formatting in RFC XML is just a strategic mistake.
Thank you. So another aspect of our current system is our lack of a modern version control system. So currently we've got system backups and we have manual processes for marking versions of documents so we can show diffs during Auth 48. But the plan is to use a modern version control system. And so to that end, we are going to be moving into GitHub. So this part of the project, though, these repos are internal. There will be one document per repo. We will have, the plan is to have tools that will create these repos for us. And we will be updating our processes. So we become comfortable and familiar with working with GitHub. But this part of working with GitHub is just for the RPC. And is really just having a version control system that's modern. Oh. Now, the next aspect, though, is supporting authors' use of GitHub. And what we have, authors are frustrated with taking our edits and trying to backport them into their GitHub repos. And this also is driving the request for us to work in Markdown, because if Auth 48 starts with a document in Markdown, then they can just create a branch in their repo of, oh, here are the RPC edits, and work through them that way. So the next phase for GitHub support would be supporting authors with taking our edits back to their GitHub repos. So again, this will require tooling support, GitHub Actions. Currently, this is still in the requirements phase. Any questions here? All right. 2, 3. All right, so that completes the overview of the strategic transforms that we had discussed at our retreat in April. So I would like to give just an update on the projects that I had covered in the previous community call. So the projects that are in progress, we had talked about an intake form to help us with document edits. We have drafted a questionnaire that we will be, well, we've drafted a questionnaire, we've created a process. I've shared this with the stream managers to get feedback. The next steps are to share with the community to let them know that when starting mid-July, when their document enters the queue, they will receive a questionnaire asking them some questions that their answers should help us move rapidly with editing their document. Russ?
I would really like to avoid this. If these questions can be asked as part of the ISG questionnaire or Shepherd write-up, then I think it'd be awesome to collect that information early. But having yet another questionnaire in a process where authors think they're done is just a problem.
So this is part of the process that we can control. If some of these questions look like they should belong in a Doc Shepherd review, I would have no problem with them being incorporated into a Doc Shepherd review. Paul?
So I both agree and disagree with Russ. It would be nice if it didn't happen here. I agree, but document shepherds and such are imperfect responders to some of the questions that you have for authors. I agree with him, though. I looked at what you had sent out with the questionnaire and your proposed timeline. I have a concern on multi-author documents that you will get 2/3 of on a 3 people in the first day, and the other one is going to have to be beaten up repeatedly because they had to be beaten up during the IETF process. If you consider one response out for a multi-author document sufficient, then I'm totally fine
Yes.
with this, because if it's a single author, they don't respond, screw them. If it's multi-authors, then great. With that, so I don't know whether you're comfortable with moving forwards with the loudmouth author, being the first one, and therefore you move forwards and you might have gotten different answers from other authors. I don't know how to answer that for you. But I strongly believe the answer is not the shepherd.
So, yes, and we are comfortable working with the author who responds first with a document that has multiple authors. And I do want to highlight, like, one of the questions we ask is a question that is in the Doc Shepherd review about was there any controversy? Because when the Doc Shepherd answers that question, it's after it's before the document enters last call. And perhaps there were no controversies within the working groups. So checking back in after the document has been approved and having the authors let us know, oh, hey, section 5, please tread very carefully with that. We're very careful with our edits anyway, but it would be good to know, oh, all right, so that was controversial and we should go very cautiously with our edits in that section. And some other things like how would you like things capitalized, or what was your the pattern that you used with your token names or your field parameters, just having them say, oh yeah, well, we'd like those in quotes, or we would like those capitalized, and that will help us as we edit. John?
Just another comment on over-reliance on document shepherds. I've seen in the last several years a number of documents which have gotten the shepherd review, gone to the ISG, gone around the loop, come back, ended up being signed off on the ISG a year or two after that shepherd review was written.
Mm.
With the document shepherd taking absolutely no interest in the document other than having drawn a short straw somewhere early in the process. And relying on that document shepherd category for much of anything is going to get you into trouble unless you have a way of distinguishing among document shepherds. You're much better off going to the working group chair or the responsible AD or someone else in the case of multi-author documents and say, okay, designate a lead author who is going to be the primary contact with us and work with the other authors as necessary, rather than relying on document shepherd. And if the authors do fight that among themselves, that's not your problem. If that person doesn't do the job, it's not your problem. And several other things followed by, it's not your problem. You certainly ought to have one point of contact to talk with, document shepherd. It's just not it.
Russ?
I'm fine with John's suggestion that, one author be designated as the point of contact. We have a better chance of educating one author rather than all authors and so on. But that person could be designated at the shepherd's write-up, so we don't have to keep revisiting it.
So, Jay.
Yeah, so just one thing about the shepherd's write-up. When talking to the IESG about this this type of thing the other day, they were clear to wanting to remind everyone that shepherd's write-up is optional, and therefore you can't be relied on as part of a process. We have to have a process that works when there isn't a shepherd write-up, and they were very, very strong about that.
All right. So real quickly, going through other projects that are in progress. The tools team is doing quite a bit of work for us. They are working on our new queue management system. They are working on our new website and new editing tools. So details have been covered in the tools calls. And in the agenda, there's also a link to those repos. On the team specialist, we had mentioned last month that we were looking at specializations on the team, either developing them or hiring. We're working on qualifications for an editor, a list of qualifications for an editor for who has experience and expertise with SVG, as we are seeing more uptake with that. And we currently don't have a SVG expert on staff. We are also talking about working on the process of this corner case where a document enters the queue and it really isn't ready for copy editing. So working on identifying quickly when a document should be returned to the stream. So we're currently talking about that. On the to-do list, as mentioned last month and still on the to-do list, the identifying RPC processes that could be shifted to authors. We currently do a whole lot of work, and perhaps some things like source code validation should be shifted to authors. And also a cost-benefit analysis of RFC XML features. It is a very rich feature set, and as we've been talking in this meeting, it adds complexity and it does add to the workload to support all these features. So again, that's to discuss with the community about which features should be supported. All right, any questions there before we move on to team updates? Have about 15 minutes. All right, moving on to team updates. Sarah.
Howdy. I'm actively editing LSR OSPF admin tags, recently moved the redundant MCAS source to RFC editor. For Auth 48 done, I passed along and it's now published cluster 507, which was RFCs 9664 and 9665. And recently this week passed along for publication RFC to be 9797. As needed, I've been adding documents to the queue, coordinating with ADs on version updates, formatting XML files for the team. Still waiting on word from Ori regarding a draft that updated from version 22 to 23. And a note on some unusual formatting that I came across was some text and empty unordered lists that was supposed to be pseudocode. So quite frightening when I opened it up and saw all these braces all over the text. But thankfully it's pseudocode and I updated it. So we're all set.
Thank you. Lynn?
Hello, can you hear me this time? Yay. Okay.
Yes.
Hi, everybody. Okay, so I'm currently editing draft IETF ACE WG COAP EAP 15. I was hoping to be done with it by now, but I should be done Monday. It's been pretty challenging. I listed several examples of why. Excuse me, language issues, an instance of misordered paragraphs where they didn't match up with a corresponding figure or IANA or another table. Mismatches between the ASCII art for given figures and corresponding SVG. Lots of inconsistently used terms, which hopefully the intake process will ultimately help with. At least one copy-paste error. So it's been a headache. I have 52 questions so far for a 41-page document. But next up after that, hopefully not so challenging, are an IRTF document and draft IETF Jose fully specified algorithms. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Lynn. Alana?
Hi. So my work recently has been primarily on clusters. So working on editing cluster C530. A lot of these are long Yang docs that also have SVG. I'm also working on cluster 506. These docs are all in auth48, but there's an issue with both of the docs in this cluster where only in the PDF output there's misalignment with artwork that uses non-ASCII characters. The author opened up an issue on GitHub, and the tools team is taking a closer look at that right now. I also had 2 docs that were passed along for publication, and that's about it for me.
Thanks, Alana. Rebecca?
Hello, everyone. I'm currently editing the LAMPS automation key usages document. I expect to wrap that up in the next few days. After that, I have the BES BGP SRv6 args to edit. I've been actively working on cluster 520 in auth48. 2 of the 3 documents are have finished up auth48, waiting on the last one. It's almost there. I've also prepared RFC to be 9805 and 9806 for publication. Those should be published soon. And on the notes, I also listed other documents that I've worked on in the past month. Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca. Paul?
Hi, sorry to jump in sort of sideways here, but something that Alana said surprised me, which is that there's a cluster of documents that are doing a lot of SVG. I'm one of the people who never sees SVG and I guess it's by my working groups. A request would be maybe sometime later this year that the RPC writes up a lessons learned from a year's worth of processing a lot of SVG. I don't know if that will help. I suspect it will cause you fewer problems coming in, but a bunch of us think that SVG is only for those other working groups. And now I'm hearing that it's happening more. So keep that in mind as something that might help you later on of, again, not transparency, but helping us help you ahead of time.
Yes, we definitely plan to add more guidance to authors. Like one of the things that we would like authors to look at is how the SVG looks in the PDF. It seems like PDF is not inspected by a lot of people before a document enters the queue. It looks great in HTML. It doesn't fit on a page in PDF. All right, Kaylin?
Hi, everyone. I currently have 1 document that I'm actively editing, 1 document in auth48, 1 document in auth48 done, which will be moving to pub soon, 2 other documents I completed edit on this month, and then 3 documents that I passed along for publication. And that's all for me.
Thank you. Madison?
Hi, everyone. It's nice to see you all. I currently have 1 that I'm actively editing, 1 that is coming up soon. Both are in cluster 509. I passed along a document that was about 85 pages long, an IETF document, to RFC editor recently that's been working on. And then I also passed along 2 documents for publication since we last met, and I'm currently monitoring incoming errata reports as needed. And that's it for me.
Thank you. Ted?
Yeah, how's it going? I have a list of the documents that I have in progress for reference review right now. It's about 8 documents, as well as a list of the ones I've completed since the last RFC or RPC community call. From this batch, I noticed a couple of notable issues. One was we had a document cluster that had come out of misrep. I think it had been there for approximately like 2 years. So there were a lot of incorrect titles for reference in the Yang modules, which is a case of like the Yang module referencing internet drafts that got published or RFCs that got obsoleted. Normal issue that I run into a lot of link rot or reference rot, as well as some inconsistent use of reference style when referencing journal articles or conference proceedings, and then incorrect URLs for inter-registry references. That's it for me.
Thanks. Karen?
Hey, I currently have 1 document I'm performing an RE check on, and I completed edit state for 2 documents in a cluster, part of C529, and moved them to RFC editor state. Those had some terminology issues. It was a bit tough to get through. I've completed RE checks for 3 documents, and I've completed Auth 48 and Pub Prep for 5 documents. Of those, 3 are waiting to be published, and 2 have already been published. And that's it for me.
Thank you. So I see a question from Kirsten in the chat, and I apologize, I have not been watching chat closely, but RE check is RFC editor state. So that is the second editing pass that a document goes through. Right. Alice?
Can you hear me okay? My work has focused on RFC editor checks and publishing documents. I've also been testing some software that could better support, but didn't find anything amazing. There has been mail to the tools list from Dominique about an experimental ABNF checker. So we've been seeing if that works better than BAP for us, and so far not, but it has some interesting things about pulling in the definitions from past RFCs, which could simplify ABNF checking. Karsten had raised an issue with, I think it was Karsten, a figure in RFC 9633 where the SVG was broken. The Chrome DevTools do show that issue, but I was testing SVG lint to see if it would catch it, and it validated it. And SVG check itself does not trip on that figure either. That's it for me.
Thank you. Sandy?
Yep. Just a few things I've been working on. We've been doing a self-audit of our internal archive to make sure all the files have been archived appropriately. And currently I've reviewed through 8250 through the current set of documents. So the more recent documents, and those are all okay. Been drafting a job description for the position that Jean was describing, and also discussing what the hiring process looks like under this new structure, like the joint effort between the LLC and AMS. I also tested the ABNF checker that Alice mentioned, and perhaps we'll send a suggestion asking Dom to include the definitions from 5234. I wasn't able to, it looks like it doesn't support that yet. One of the documents that came in did not have a source file, and the authors used NROF to create it, and it had some really challenging formatting because of the nested lists and just some unusual things that you can do in NROF that you can't easily do in XML. And then working with Sarah on the intake form and process. The documents listed here is just what's currently in front of me, and then we've published, or I published 17 since we last met, but working with Alice to publish 7 more, so we have a few more coming out soon. Any questions?
Thank you. Sandy, do you want to talk about the FYI section, the statistics there?
Yep, sure.
Awesome.
So I think this first one is what Paul was mentioned earlier about being able to provide authors with average processing times. And so if you look at that link, it'll show you what the average processing time is for edit state and for RFC editor state, and then those two together would be approximately how long it would take a document to enter Auth 48 from the time it's approved, assuming there's no other outstanding issues. So for example, there's no IANA holds, there's no misref issues, that kind of stuff. That gets updated weekly, so you could see updated stats there. The next one is just a heads up that there were a significant number of pages and documents entering the queue in Q1 of this year, which pushed us into something under the current SLA would be tier 3, which means the processing times need to be redefined. But as Jean mentioned, the current SLA is not fit for purpose, so we're not really doing the work to redefine the processing times. But what you will notice is that processing times are currently longer right now because of that huge load that came in. And then the last one is just you can see what's happening on the reports page. Any questions about current stats and what's happening there?
I see a couple of
Yes.
people in the queue. Yes,
So, Sandy, you know, we see a spike every March as leading into dot transitions. Was this year worse?
Yes. Yes, this is the first time that I can remember being pushed into tier 3. So page count was significantly higher than in previous times. I would have to look, but there was one year where it was Q4 end of the prior year and Q1, so combined the lift was very heavy, but I don't remember the actual how the two would compare against this one Q1 submission spike.
Robert, can I go in front of you? Because I can tell you why that happened. So that happened because we were clearing queues, right? We were clearing ADs, outgoing AD queues before the incoming ADs came in, because we wanted to get the drafts out that the current ADs were working on without transferring a huge pub rec queue to new ADs. So that's why that happened. Good for us because we've got new ADs that come in with little queues, small queues. Bad for you.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for all the docs. Robert.
Just really a question from Carson that got lost in the noise. He was asking if the documents that were in the edit state but not listed today are just awaiting assignment or in some other condition.
They may be in flux. So they likely have not been assigned to a primary editor, but they may have been formatted and the references may have been checked. So there is like different stages at play here. Thanks for calling that out, Robert.
All right, thank you. 2-minute warning. It was called to my attention that the roadmap that is in GitHub, the roadmap itself was public, but the repo behind it was not. I've made that public. If you weren't seeing anything previously, check it out again. The next meeting falls within the Madrid timeframe. So just wanted to call that out. And I believe we will pick this meeting back up in mid-August. Please swing by the desk, say hi, ask questions there at IETF 123. Any other business? Questions? Robert, you're still in the queue. All right. Well, everyone, thank you for your time. And, oh, John.
Jean, for those of us who will be remote in Madrid, think about whether you want to supplement that, come to the desk and say hello suggestion with a way for us to talk with you. I don't care if the answer is no, but think about it.
So we have previously had office hours in Zulip. We can set that up again. I don't know if Gather is still used. It's been a while since I've dropped into a Gather space for an IETF meeting.
Yeah, as I say, we're thinking about it. If it's more trouble than it's worth, or whatever, don't worry about it. But there
well,
are
we could,
people can't stop by the desk.
yeah, fair enough. Yes. Definitely we can have people in Zulip. And if you would like video conferencing, we'll talk about it. We'll figure out what we can do. Thank you. All right. So we are at the top of the hour. Anything else? All right. Thank you for your time. This was a great conversation. See you in Madrid. If not, see you in August. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean.
Bye-bye.